Hello everyone, and we're back again today with another video. And today the topic is actually fashion and brands and the vision of the high street for 2020 and the new the new era, I guess, and how there's not really as much of a personality, or there are still like movements and stuff nowadays, but how maybe there isn't as much of a significant style now. um, Technology has sort of come into place, how we're a bit more retrospective, and how each era has come on, we're a bit less identified potentially, but specifically about what it means to be aware of fashion and brands. Now, as you may have noticed, I've tried to be as sort of plain as possible and not involve any brands and stuff, just because that's sort of a TV trope sort of thing, and maybe not so much of the internet. But you can get wrong, I think, for having brands on your stuff without sort of censoring them and all this sorts of thing, or at least companies don't want to endorse products that they don't haven't been paid for and all these sorts of things, because obviously they want money. But um, also because I like to personally be quite brand neutral, and there are brands that I like, but I like to wear staples and classic items, and I think we've talked about this before. And also, I'll just say now as well, this is a take video, so I'm apologising now if I do repeat anything that we have talked about in previous videos, but hopefully they'll tie in. So like I possibly said before, I like to wear staple stuff, and I like to sort of have meaning to the things that I wear. Um, so they're more of a staple, more of an iconic piece. Do you know what I mean? And when I fashion things, because this is what we're going to go into now, is what the understanding of fashion and branding actually is. Like, where I think of fashion, it's actually how you actually wear something. So everyone could be wearing the same item, but how we actually style it to ourselves is sort of how we identify ourselves, and that's what fashion is to me, rather than what things actually come out into sort of the fold, as I call it, and I call that the mode. So where we have things which sort of come into fashion, as we say, I call that as like sort of the mode, or sort of the general consensus and the general idea of what people sort of like, and sort of are finding themselves attributed to and akin to, or whatever. Now, whether it's because we associate each other with the things that we like, or maybe there is actually this sort of overriding group understanding of how we move into the same sort of ideas as we realize these things ourselves, which would be quite a nice humanistic element. But so that's fashion, and then branding is a bit similar to this sort of general consensus, and how all the things that we like, all these brands, there is actually, like, the word brand maybe is how things are actually grouped together, and how we go into, hopefully we're going to go into this social paradigms idea, and how there's maybe actually like association with color and feeling and music and all these sorts of things, and spiritually how we actually, what the things we like, maybe brands are like that, and it's sort of the things that we associate each other with are sort of how we group ourselves together. And these brandings are actually about psychological understandings of preference and all these sorts of things. And the brand is actually like the collection of like, say you were going to brand like meat or something, like actually cereal or whatever, you'd have all these ratings about all these, like, maybe the blood type, maybe the fat content, maybe the type of animal it is, sort of things. And the that is the sort of categorization of how we list ourselves, and that is what a brand is. So the name would be the association of all the understandings and all the attributations of the things that we enjoy and like and see in certain brands. And that's why when we potentially wear things, um, we are wearing them in two ways, because this is my next point. When you wear fashion, there seems to be two elements of it, on like high fashion especially, and general fashion as well. There's the first one is what's current and what's new, and sort of how, what people are putting out, which is like like fashionable, or in the mode, as I was saying. And then there's another one which is more of a plain thing, which tends to be like the higher big brands. They'll have sort of all these plain things, which will just be sort of um, the identifying things are saying, I actually support the brand. So rather than you're actually enjoying it, it's more you're saying, I am a part of this group, and it's almost like football teams as well. Um, it's like you're actually a supporter, and when you buy these things, you're literally supporting the manufacturing of these things, and you're saying, I agree with this ideology, and I want people to associate the fact that I'm, a a supporter of this brand or whatever. But as they go through the different seasons and they put out their different like catwalk things, um, that's the actual they're the actual products, aren't they? They're the real things that are being created. Um, but I think it's kind of a bit strange. I mean, once you get more and more associated with these brands and you do actually identify with them more and you do enjoy them more, you do kind of want to wear these things and you want to say, yeah, I really like this brand and I like what they're doing, all these sorts of things. But it's kind of a bit weird to wear a plain item in itself with just a label on. And I made this joke years ago about how I thought only like mental people were supposed to wear their labels on the outside of their clothes. Because back in like mental hospitals, they used to make people wear their labels on the outside to show that they're like crazy. And I was like, oh, a bit of a boomer joke, that bit of a boomer joke. But I was like, yeah, why would you want to do that? But over time, I realized this is why it's a redo, because I sort of realized that there is reason to why people wear plain things with the labels on. But I also feel like if the brand isn't supporting you and if you aren't involved in sort of the bit banana in my mouth, pear or something, gross. But if you aren't going to the shows and if you aren't being invited to the parties and you aren't being involved in sort of the new releases and sorts of things, though you are supporting the brand, I don't feel like you're getting recognized by the brand as much as you should be. And maybe I feel like as the future has progressed and as things have become larger industries, we've become less associated with the designers and less associated with the houses themselves and the fashion houses. And maybe in the past, how you might have went into a shop and you might have known the people who actually run it, or when you work there, you're actually more involved in sort of family business idea. You're actually more involved in sort of the grouping and all the people who go into like making the industry. I feel like as it's got a bit bigger, there's more of a detachment from that, and we're not as involved like as a consumer or necessarily even as a worker as we are and actually supported in the brand as much. And I feel like as the price has got more expensive, also that involvement and that sort of recognition and support of the brand has also dropped a lot. Um, so I would like to see in the future maybe a sort of reinstated element of like brand association and how shops aren't necessarily run by people who are on a scheduling, but more, you become a member of the house and you become a member of the sort of organization, and it's more of just this is a place because you go to a place or a place of work because you enjoy it and because you want to be part of that sort of social structure rather than because you're imposed to do such a thing. Um, and I'd like to see more of a high street value where places aren't just places of work, but they're actually places of societal sort of um, togetherness. And obviously, there would still be the brand would still be recognised by the brand, and there would still be procedures of how these things work. But like sort of like an authoritative element of what is and what isn't recognised by the brand, but more there would be a communal sort of understanding of how the brand operates, and then you would get your invitations to your shows and your sort of catwalks and all these sorts of things, and maybe things wouldn't cost as much. Things would cost what they cost to make because you're actually part of the fashion house. Do you know what I mean? And you could maybe even live there, or go there for schooling, or go there for just parties and all these sorts of things, and a house would actually be a house, like a fashion house, rather than this sort of like out of touch sort of understanding of what this brand is. And when you would wear the badge of the fashion house, you're saying, "Oh, I'm actually part of it." Do you know what I mean? And it's almost like it's a uniform at that point, as well as being identified as a supporter of the brand. So, more like wearing when you go to a show and you buy merchandise, more like buying, merchandise of a band T-shirt than necessarily just a band T-shirt, which says you like it. But it doesn't mean there still aren't those elements to what it means to be associated with a brand. But obviously there's different categorization of how involved you are with the industry. And I mean, these elements all still technically exist. And whether it's the uniform or whether it's being endorsed by the brand or whether it's just being sort of a supporter of the brand, and these elements all exist, but maybe something which actually ties these things in a bit closer for the consumer. Yeah. So that's sort of my vision for high street, and the recognition of the mode, as I call it, and the fold and all sorts of things, and the uniform, sorry, and the mentality that goes into brands, and what I would like to see, because I would like to create a house of like house games and do all these things, actually create things, and I'd like to make it a non-profit. Doesn't mean that everyone would, but I would like to do things which create because I have this belief that beauty and things are a product of practicality or a product of actual um, like things which are appreciated have sense, underlying sense, like within the natural order and stuff, and whether it's actually the application of the way we fashion practical things becomes beautiful, or it's the other side would be the complexity of life and how things are closer to this sort of life element. But that's the sort of things that we appreciate. So I'd like to create something which actually just creates like um, uh, non what's the word, non-nonsense or whatever, like really down to earth, like practical things, which like a kit wear of like practical things, which would then become fashionable, which would just be um not sort of like flamboyant or whatever, but just like really practical things which are really like cost effective and stuff. And there wouldn't be, because I feel like nowadays we create more and more of these things and they become more and more elaborate, and they become a bit like not tacky, but sort of a bit like daft. Do you know what I mean? It's almost like these companies want to create as many things as possible and change the shape and change all the things, but the functionality is just getting a bit blown out, really. And we don't really need, to replace all of these items so often, because obviously it's wasteful, it's expensive, and it's not really that practical. So I would like to have, if I was to make fashion, I'd have these two elements. I'd have one which was just the practical nature of things, which not uniform, but like a kitwear, like utilitarian kitwear, not like techwear or whatever, but just like genuine uh, functional garment. And then another thing, which would be the sort of the modern consensus sort of thing, and the conscious idea of what we associate things with, but would necessarily, I still want this element of things to be able to be reusable and not wasteful and stuff, and um, like recyclable and all these sorts of things, and also cost effective. So that's what my ethos would be if I was to create a brand. And hopefully, because I am quite into design and stuff and all these sorts of things, and obviously I was talking about this art school in a previous video, so hopefully I would be able to make a brand, and that's what my ethos would be, and that's what I'd be all about. And I'm quite interested to actually explore my ideas of fashion and the fold, and the schooling of people, and all of these sorts of things. But yeah, that's brands and fashion, and the fold of the mode, as I like to call it. And thank you. I hope you've enjoyed that, and maybe we'll go into this in further, and maybe we'll even talk about actual designing things and stuff like this, and people's interests and stuff like that. So thank you, and yeah, right, get at me if you like. Nice one.